Welcome, witches, wizards, and all those enchanted by the mysteries of the wizarding world. Today we dive into a theory so intricate, so chillingly brilliant, it would surely have earned even Albus Dumbledore's rarest of twinkle-eyed approvals. Could it be that Dumbledore, the master strategist, orchestrated his own death not only to safeguard Draco Malfoy's soul, nor merely to save Harry Potter's future, but to entrap the fate of the Elder Wand itself? Settle in. Ready your minds for magic most cunning, as we explore the notion that the fall of the greatest headmaster of Hogwarts was, in truth, the final move in a centuries-old chess game of wand lore. Long before Dumbledore's final moments atop the Astronomy Tower, the Elder Wand had stitched a tapestry of blood and betrayal across the ages, from Antioch Peveril's pride to Gellert Grindelwald's tyranny. Dumbledore, holder of the wand by conquest, understood its peril better than any wizard alive. He knew that allegiance could shift not merely by murder, but by intent, by defeat, by a crack in the wielder's will. His possession of the wand was an act of stewardship rather than conquest, a secret he guarded even as the storm of Voldemort's return gathered over the magical world. And thus, Dumbledore's final year became one of deliberate design. We know from the Half-Blood Prince that Dumbledore was already mortally cursed by the Ring of Marvolo Gaunt, a Horcrux, treacherous in its allure. Knowing that his death was imminent, Dumbledore's actions began to weave a spell more powerful than any he could cast with a wand alone, a spell of preparation, of sacrifice, and of loyalty. His conversations with Severus Snape, those whispered and anguished plans, were not solely about the mercy of a quick death, but about controlling the Elder Wand's destiny, ensuring it would not pass, by force or by folly, into Voldemort's waiting grasp. The tower scene itself, drenched in the tragic gold of a setting sun, carries all the hallmarks of Dumbledore's orchestration. When Draco Malfoy, wand trembling, cornered him atop the battlements, Dumbledore, weakened yet alert, did not disarm Draco nor fight him off, though he could have easily done so. Instead, he immobilized Harry under the invisibility cloak, ensuring that the true witness to his death was hidden, unable to interfere. Then, Dumbledore turned not to defend himself but to plead, not for his own life but for Draco's soul, and, crucially, for Snape's action. The truth emerges clearer when we reflect on Dumbledore's final plea. Severus, please. Many have debated its meaning. Was it a plea for death, for mercy, or was it a deeper instruction? Do it now, Severus, before the wand can realign itself to Draco, before anyone else can claim mastery. Dumbledore understood that if Draco disarmed him but did not kill him, the Elder Wand's loyalty might already have begun to shift. And if Severus, someone outside the chain of intended conquest, delivered the killing blow, the wand's allegiance would be left in limbo, confused and ultimately free for a true heir to claim later. Someone who understood sacrifice, not slaughter, as the wand's rightful master. In understanding Dumbledore's plan, we must first scrutinize Draco Malfoy's role, not merely as a boy thrust into darkness, but as an unwitting pawn in a greater strategy. Throughout the Half-Blood Prince, Draco is burdened by the impossible task Voldemort assigned him, to assassinate Dumbledore. Draco's attempts, from the cursed necklace to the poisoned mead, were acts of desperation, not malice. Dumbledore, perceiving Draco's anguish, never retaliated with force. Instead, he sought to shield him from the irreversible act of murder, even if it meant forfeiting his own life. Yet, here lies the subtlety of Dumbledore's design. By allowing Draco to disarm him atop the Astronomy Tower, by surrendering to the boy's wand, Dumbledore intentionally allowed the Elder Wand's allegiance to slip quietly away, a transfer not rooted in murder, but in defeat. It is the disarming, the mastery through conquest rather than death, that would set the Elder Wand's path on an unexpected course. Voldemort, for all his cunning, would later misunderstand this critical distinction. Severus Snape's part in this carefully woven tapestry cannot be overstated. Bound by the unbreakable vow to Narciso Malfoy, Snape swore to protect Draco and, if necessary, complete his mission. The vow was not merely a promise of assistance, it was a life debt, a tether as magically binding as any Fidelius charm. In orchestrating Snape's role, Dumbledore ensured not just a painless death, but a complex safeguarding of the Elder Wand's true mastery. If Snape, rather than Draco, delivered the killing blow, the Elder Wand would remain confused, unattached fully to Voldemort's expected line of conquest. This act of layered sacrifice turned Snape into a double-blind in the ultimate game of wand lore. Voldemort, believing that murder alone dictated loyalty, would eventually seek to kill Snape to claim the Elder Wand's allegiance. Yet Snape was never the wand's true master. Draco Malfoy was, and in a final twist worthy of Dumbledore's intellect, the wand's loyalty would ultimately pass not to Voldemort, but to Harry Potter, who would disarm Draco at Malfoy Manor months later. Thus, Dumbledore's death was not a simple act of martyrdom, nor the tragic consequence of betrayal. It was the ultimate sleight of hand, a death staged not merely to end life, but to preserve life, to trap the Elder Wand's fate within a maze of intentions, where loyalty could not be claimed by murder, but had to be won by understanding and rightful conquest. Dumbledore's death became not an end, but the keystone of a plan designed to destroy Voldemort's last hope of true immortality. When Harry Potter later confronted Draco Malfoy at Malfoy Manor, the delicate thread Dumbledore had spun reached its tautest point. In the chaos of capture and betrayal, Harry wrenched Draco's wand from his grasp, not with killing intent, not with ambition, but in a moment of desperate survival. Yet in doing so, Harry unknowingly became the true master of the Elder Wand. The wand, ancient and proud, recognized a conquest that reflected not slaughter, but strength of spirit, the very quality that Dumbledore had hoped would prevail. Voldemort's ignorance of wand lore, ironic for one so obsessed with power, would ultimately be his undoing. Believing that Snape's death would force the Elder Wand's allegiance to him, Voldemort killed Snape with cold, ritualistic precision. He did not understand that mastery of the Elder Wand had long since slipped through his grasp, carried away by a boy who had never sought it, who would never use it to dominate, but only to defend. In this tragic miscalculation, Voldemort sealed his own fate, blinded by his belief that death and conquest were synonymous. Dumbledore's gambit was breathtaking in its audacity. It demanded not only his death, but the careful manipulation of emotion, intention, and magical lore. The Elder Wand, crafted with a mind of its own, as ancient magic often is, respected loyalty and conquest, not bloodlust and murder. Dumbledore's trap ensured that Voldemort, so saturated in the old ways of violence, could never fully grasp the nuance of its allegiance. Only someone with Harry's innate humility could claim the wand's loyalty without corrupting its power. This layering of fates, the cursed ring, Draco's disarming, Snape's killing blow, Harry's final act of defiance, suggests that Dumbledore saw farther ahead than any chess master. His death was not the crumbling of a fortress, but the triggering of a long-planned sequence, a magical contingency whose ending he could not witness, but whose unfolding he trusted implicitly to those he believed in. In this, Dumbledore demonstrated the truest magic of all, faith in others, and a belief that love, not power, would decide the final battle. Looking more deeply, Dumbledore's death was not just about the Elder Wand. It was a meditation on power itself. In a world fractured by those who sought domination, Dumbledore's final choice was to place his trust in vulnerability, to weaponize sacrifice rather than strength. In doing so, he subverted centuries of magical tradition that treated powerful objects like the Elder Wand as mere prizes for the ruthless. His death was his final lesson, that true mastery lies not in winning battles, but in winning hearts and minds. Consider too the symbolic parallels woven into this moment. The Resurrection Stone, another of the Deathly Hallows, had already played its part in cursing Dumbledore, serving as a grim reminder that even the greatest wizards are fallible. Tempted by the desire to reunite with loved ones, Dumbledore paid for his mistake with his life. Yet instead of clinging to despair, he transformed his impending death into an opportunity. An echo of the choice Harry would later face in willingly walking into Voldemort's embrace in the Forbidden Forest. Through sacrifice, both men reclaimed agency over death rather than being consumed by it. In a sense, Dumbledore's death and the Elder Wand's trajectory mirror the tale of the three brothers from the Tales of Beedle the Bard, a story Dumbledore knew intimately and which Hermione would later retell. The eldest brother's quest for invincibility ended in betrayal and death, a fate Voldemort could never avoid because he could never comprehend the lesson. Dumbledore, however, chose the third brother's path, to greet death willingly as an old friend. His death was not a defeat, but a deliberate crossing of a threshold that rendered Voldemort's ambitions hollow and futile. It is a bitter irony that the Dark Lord, obsessed with mastering death, was outwitted by a man who embraced it. Dumbledore's life had always been punctuated by regrets. His sister's death, his youthful pride, the catastrophic friendship with Grindelwald. But his final act redeemed all these failures. By surrendering the Elder Wand's loyalty to a path Voldemort could not corrupt, he planted the seed of his enemy's destruction, not through confrontation, but through cunning compassion. When the dust settled, when wands were lowered and silence fell across the rubble of Hogwarts, it became clear that Dumbledore's strategy had been far grander than even Harry had fully understood. Harry's own decision to use the Elder Wand to repair his faithful Holly and Phoenix Feather wand, and then return the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, was the final affirmation of Dumbledore's hope. Power unused is often power most wisely wielded. In setting the Elder Wand to rest, Harry closed the circle that Dumbledore had opened atop the astronomy tower that fateful night. There is beauty in how seamlessly Dumbledore's death fits into the larger tapestry of the Wizarding World struggles. It is a story of the old ways crumbling, of a new era shaped not by might, but by mercy. His death was a quiet revolution, a reminder that even the most ancient magics could be undone by understanding, that the oldest and fiercest loyalties were not to relics, but to choices made in love and sacrifice. In ensuring that the Elder Wand would never again fall into the hands of a tyrant, Dumbledore protected the very soul of the Wizarding World itself. Through all this, Dumbledore's greatest magic was neither his command of spells nor his command of people. It was his unwavering belief that human nature at its best could outwit even death itself. He gambled everything on the idea that someone, perhaps a boy with messy hair and a scar, would choose not to seize power, but to relinquish it. That someone would choose not revenge, but restoration. And in the end, that faith was not misplaced. Thus, we see Dumbledore's death not as a tragedy, nor merely as a noble sacrifice, but as an intricate act of magical foresight, an elaborate wand trap, centuries in the making, woven through with threads of sorrow, genius, and hope, a final testament that even in his fall, Albus Dumbledore remained the master of a magic deeper than any spell could capture, the magic of trust, of love, and of letting go.